So one of the largest challenges for people who are interested in improving or mastering leg locks is finding training partners. Even if you do have a ready supply of grappling partners, not everyone enjoys having leg locks done to them. Certainly it's difficult to do them with great power. So I'm going to give you some really easy guidelines for creating a leg lock mannequin, basically a dummy leg that you can crank on with good resistance. So what you'll need essentially is you will need a basic pool noodle. You get that at any store like a Walmart for $1 to $2. The larger gauge is better with a larger core. I have a second sort of length of pipe insulation that you can get at the hardware store in the plumbing section, and you'll see why sometimes you need gap fills, and if you want to dress up the leg and give it actual heels and knees and things like that, that'll come in handy. I have a 1-inch width of PVC pipe. A 4-foot length is more than enough, and what I've done is I've cut it into 3 lengths. So the first length is really to emulate roughly the length of a foot, and then after that you need 2 lengths of roughly shin length. Shin and thigh are exactly the same length, really bone-wise, but I've made the thigh in this case a little bit longer, just so that if I want to start going across and branching out and making a hip, something I can stuff my foot against or split and push against, I will have it. And then here we have just a basic plastic 90-degree elbow joint that would basically doesn't need to accommodate the tube, although this one does. What it needs to accommodate is this, which is our spring. And I'm using a basic gate closure spring for your yard. When you get them, they'll normally have this kind of hardware screwed onto the tips. This kind of attachment for a door. I've just taken those off so I have clean springs. In the case of the foot one, I will need this because we will be inserting this inside here. And then of course, you need the ubiquitous and ever-present duct tape. You'll need a good solid roll of duct tape to get started. So the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to basically prepare a flexible, resistant ankle. So what I've done is I've stuffed that door spring all the way down to the base of the plastic elbow. In this case, it's all the way touching the bottom. And then all I'm doing is I'm taking small rings. I don't want to make them too wide. Small rings of this pipe insulation. It doesn't really matter if these are on or not. And I'm effectively stuffing this in as a spacer. So it's going to go around. It will rip up a little bit. I'm using just a training knife or butter knife, anything will work. Just stuffing that down the length. It's not going to give it much in the way of actual hold and retention. Duct tape is going to be doing the bulk of that, but what it is doing is it's just keeping it a little bit centered. So again, it doesn't need to look too beautiful. Just need to have that stuffed. So now it's quite packed in there, and you see there's a little bit of basic hold on that. That'll allow me now to start taping it into place and attaching the foot. Now what I've done is I've jammed in that foot length into this pipe so it's a tight fit, hammered it in a little bit so it's in as deep as it'll go. That's basically touching at the base of the spring. And now what I'm doing on the spring is I'm getting ready to insert it into the shin bone. Now you'll see it's a fairly good fit, but it's not snug. And again, although duct tape will be doing the majority of the holding, what I'm doing is I'm just taking little lengths of this this pipe insulation foam, and I'm working it just between the springs like this. Not everywhere, just a few of them. And what that's going to allow us to do now as we push, it's going to give us, some of them will come off, but it's going to give us a little bit more, they're too long, they tend to cut off, a little bit more resistance. So now it gets quite snug going in. And I just want to leave, now it's quite nice and tight, just want to leave a little bit of movement, a little bit of area here for the ankle flexion. So this will give me an ankle that I can actually start to flex. So now what we're doing, we're just duct taping this in place so that just one spiral of that hinge, of that spring is exposed. So it suffices to tape it however you want, but a really good trick I'll show you is to take the actual duct tape and to floss it over the actual ring that's inside. So this way it's providing sort of a roof, if you will, that's holding that spring more deeply inside. And this will give you a very, very tight piece, tight hold. If you've never ripped duct tape vertically, it's exactly like ripping medical tape. You want to place your 2 index fingers side by side, purse it with your thumb, and then pull downward. It's a little bit of a sort of awkward motion the first few times you do it, and your tape will get all mangled up. But a little bit of practice, it gets much easier. So same thing in ripping it widthwise. You just want to have those 2 index fingers side by side and purse it cleanly down the middle. And This lets you get nice thin pieces so you don't have to waste. Floss it nice and deep, and you want to have enough overlap on the edge that afterwards we're going to be able to come around here with thicker pieces and lock those into place, and that'll give you a nice rock solid hold on there. So now what we've done is we've just finished the preliminary duct tape here on the ankle joint, so we see we have a nice working foot and ankle. We've taped it firmly in place. I've done the same thing at the knee, exactly here, stuffing it in. The only difference is once I had that functioning knee joint, I put one thin layer of the gray pipe insulation here. I just used some scrap pieces and duct taped it on top to give some extra girth, because this will become the thigh. Next step is to take our pool noodle. Pool noodle, I've just slid it down the middle so it completely opens, and I've made a little sort of notch here so that we can bend this into a 90-degree angle like the foot, and then we'll begin the rather annoying process of inserting this. So here I intend to have the front of the thigh a little bit open and some extra mass at the end, and this will let us build up some quadricep muscles and give it a little bit more of a real feel. Again, this is totally optional at this stage, not at all required. That's just me and art school. So once we have this rough shape, now it'll be time to duct tape things into place. So now we've got our basic knee joint here, and all I'm using is some of that extra pipe insulation. Again, I said this at the beginning was entirely optional. I'm just putting a few layers, kind of making a symmetrical thigh, not really a left or a right, just kind of a semblance of a wider quadricep. I just slapped down some pieces, I'm loosely holding them in place, and now I'll bundle this all together with the duct tape. So guys, we can see here, not even close to being polished or done. Still got some gaps in the tape, and certainly with use, it's going to require patching, but the tape will stretch quite a bit. So if we imagine, just in this position, if you'll pardon the mess, just in that position, I'm already learning, right? I hold that really well. I can tuck my feet under there, and now if I don't correctly rotate that shoulder, I'll be hard pressed to get enough push. So we see the tape doesn't even rip. That's breaking that ankle completely backwards. If I was prone to the BJJ style with the foot, we see that gives us leverage, even if you wanted to crisscross for training purposes. It's all up to you. But ideally, I would like to work it with my knee squeeze so that in either position, I can hold that very tightly, get that up nice and high, and I have super good position. And that gives you a huge workout. There's tremendous resistance. The leg holds its form, really, really solid. I've only put about 2 layers of tape there, but here we can put about 8-9 layers of tape, and you see the effect. So once you finish this, just a few vertical pieces, a few horizontal, and it'll hold, and we'll finish up and tape it up nice and solid, make it look as leg-like as we can, and put the final touches on it. So we're almost ready to rip this thing apart, guys. When we did some really vigorous twisting on it, this style of duct tape kept ripping across the knee, which is forgivable. It's not the end of the world. But just to protect the skin, all we've done is we've taken a piece of something stretchy. Any cotton t-shirt would do. We have an old second skin that we just threw over the top. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to duct tape pretty much all around it, almost entirely, and just leave a little knee pad. So this way I can bend it all the way open, and that's just the spring. And that's about as far as it'll go. And you'll rarely even be going past that, but I just want something that's going to stay quite stable there. All right, guys, so now we have it taped up to a good enough level to begin. We added just a little bit of extra thickness to the thigh, purely cosmetic, just to give you some orientation, some awareness to the size. That required a little bit more than 1 roll of duct tape in order to make it wider, but if you weren't doing that, 1 roll would suffice. We have this whole knee area here reinforced, as we said, with the Under Armour, the second skin. And then on the ankle, you could do the same thing, but generally, if you just give a little bit of extra tape, you have more than enough space to flex it in the manner that you would for a leg lock. So again, all the leg locks that we saw, we can isolate just bending the knee, using our cradle. We can isolate getting correct position on the arm, shrugging, stirring with the body. If this proves to be too difficult to squeeze, you can look at posting one foot on top. Makes a big difference. And I can look at bridging, getting onto my side to get nice extension. And I can even work going into my figure 4 toe locks, locking that in place with a nice figure 4 lock, and then getting good grip and bringing that in. So there's good resistance, great ways of learning. All my heel hooks, toe locks, moving through my Achilles, going up to my knee scissors, any lock that I would do on a human. That noise you'll hear clicking, guys, is just the spring inside the actual cylinder. Sometimes it slides down one or two, but it goes right back. There's nowhere for that spring link to go. Given the length of it, it'll come out and go back into its chamber. So it's fully safe, and you can apply that pressure. That's usually a ligament popping underneath. So I can work freely with confidence through all of my positions. Now this is a more complicated version. Gives you the satisfaction of resistance. Often in training, you've seen this in other videos, just a piece of wood covered in this case with one yoga mat and towels on the outside and duct tape. Super cheap, non-bending, it does snap for locks. We use these a lot for cutting when we do knife training. We put them sometimes in a tire filled with cement with a steel base, but we can also have people use them and actively prod and stab and have the students cut on it. But the same kind of tool can be used as well for training the lock, right? If you have a thin enough doweling, this is thin enough at 1 inch, you could theoretically snap it. I can feel it ready to go. But unless you're trying to train breaks and you want to keep on going through them, I would not recommend it. We have made in the past some, more for arm locks, which are large noodles with a hollow center with no tape inside, that allow us to sort of run a stick in without any stickiness, break it, and then pull it back out and empty out the tip. So that's also one option. You just want to keep the other end open as well. So in case you pull out this side and the other half gets stuck in, you can run a stick through like you're loading an old style gun and push it through. And then another variation that we made, this again is just based on a wooden doweling, but a heavy oak inch doweling. We had put a shoe, built up some muscle. This is a non-bending one, but we had made this for when we were working with physically disabled practitioners. So it allowed people in wheelchairs to have something crunchy. We have some crunched up water bottles in there so they get the idea of rolling the wheel against the thigh. We used it as well, not just for wheelchair work, but for work with walking sticks and canes and strikes from seated positions. So there's any sort of manner of way that you want to use this. Obviously a shoe could be put onto the base of that to give it an extra real feel. Lots of alternatives, but very, very simple and relatively inexpensive, ranging in the vicinity from about $5 to somewhere in the vicinity of about 20 to maybe about 40, 45. That allow you to get a variety of options, limited excuses, and have something tangible and physical that you can use to practice your locks and really massively improve your mental mapping of foot and leg position.